Okay. It's a good do.
Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to this evening's Community Protection and Housing Scrutiny Review Board meeting. It is 6 p.m. on Monday, the 29th of April, and you'd never believe it outside, but I'm reliably informed it is the 29th of April. I always like to start off with introductions for the benefit of anybody watching at home. So my name is Councillor Matthew Eyre. I'm a councillor for Oakwood Ward, and I'm the chair of this committee. I'll go around to my right.
I'm Councillor Ingle. I'm not a member of this board, but I like to come along and interfere.
I'm Steve Ingle, councillor for Chellaston and Shelton Ward.
We honour her, councillor for Markworth.
Councillor Kieran Call, councillor for Normandy.
Councillor Sarah Chambers, councillor for Sunderland Osmaston Ward.
Councillor Gaurav Pandey, Markworth New Zealand Ward.
Simon Aitken, Head of Neighbourhood Services.
Carly Walker, Technical Manager for Waste.
Neil Woodhead, Service Manager for Locality Working.
Steve Farm, Councillor for Alveston South. Pop Gill, Head of Community Safety.
Steve Mason, Democratic Service.
Fabulous, thank you, everybody. So we'll make our way through the agenda. So, Steve, have you any apologies?
Chair.
No, fantastic. Late items to be introduced by the chair. There are none for this meeting. 3 declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest at all? No, fab. As I always put on record, that from November 2021 to May 2023, I was the cabinet member for Place and Community Development, and then Community Development, Place and Tourism. Having gone through the agenda, although our report point 6 does touch a little bit on a decision I made as cabinet member, I don't think it in any way precludes me from chairing that part of the meeting. Moving on then to item 4, some minutes of the meeting held on 2nd January 2024. Anyone any issues with the minutes at all? No, fantastic. I'll take those then as approved. So item 5, update on blue and brown bins. Carly and Simon, I believe over to you.
Do I need to present the info? Okay. So we've produced this report at the request of the chair to provide an update on the blue and brown bin services, as well as information about future developments. The blue bin service in the city is well established. It's been in place for many years, and most people hopefully are familiar with the range of materials that we collect. Data that we hold on our services from the system that we use to operate collections shows that over 95% of households have access to blue bin recycling. The remaining 5% are perhaps living at locations where they might not have sufficient space to locate recycling bins, or it might be that they live in an opt-in area where they've chosen not to opt into recycling. The opt-in areas include Arboretum, Mackworth and Normanton. So since 2019, we've operated an opt-in recycling service in these areas. There's nearly 5,000 properties in those ward areas that are on a weekly refuse collection, and so far 1,400 have opted in for blue bin recycling. The most of those are in the Mackworth area, where take-up is really high. It's about 70%, and the distribution can be seen in the map contained within the report. In terms of how we manage that waste, once we've collected it, we bulk it locally in Sinfin at Biffa, where any large items of contamination, so that's things that we don't ask for, is removed from the material before being bulked up, and we haul it to a material recycling facility in Alfreton. Here it's sorted predominantly by machinery, but also by hand. And by the time the material has passed through the facility and come out the back end, we tend to end up with 13 grades of good quality recyclate, which can be sent on to various different locations to be reprocessed into new materials. One of the things we're commonly asked about is whether the materials we collect are actually recycled. We obviously go to great lengths and great expense to collect the materials that we do, so we do send them on for recycling. to ensure that the materials are managed appropriately. We make sure that through the procurement process that we only contract with legitimate service providers, and there is a process whereby they demonstrate that they're suitably licensed and reputable. And then the same goes down the chain for all of the off-takers for all the various materials. We regularly do audits, the councils with our off-takers, to validate that what's happening with the materials is what's happening. And we also, through the material recycling facility, they will sample the material from Derby so they can establish the composition of those materials. Part of the process produces a waste element, which then has to be disposed of properly, because we do collect around 20% of stuff that cannot go on to be recycled. Some of it is created by way of the process we collect the materials, so we collect it mixed together. It does create a volume of small glass that can't be recycled, but then there's quite a few other things in there that shouldn't be in there. Ranging from food waste, bagged general waste, it might be toys, electrical items, nappies, all sorts of different stuff we find in the blue bins. And there's a range of different reasons for that. Some people want to be able to recycle more, and so they put it in the bin in the hope that we can recycle it. Sometimes it might be lack of knowledge. Other times people just can't manage their waste appropriately at home. And it's unfortunately done deliberately. And that accounts for almost 20% of what we collect in the blue bins. Moving on to the brown bin service, organic garden and food waste. The most recent version of the brown bin service has been in place since 2019, and we've got over 67,000 customers now, which again is shown on the map included in the report at 4.14. Predominantly people use the bin for garden waste. We do get a very small proportion of food waste that people voluntarily recycle in the brown bin. Fortunately, contamination in the brown bin scheme is very low. It's not an issue that we have. And we believe that the reason for that is that people have opted in to use that service, but also it's a service which makes people's lives easier. It helps them to get rid of the garden waste, so they haven't got to go to the HWRC. So there's probably a couple of reasons for that. In terms of how we process it, the organic material collected is again bought locally, and then we haul it to Crewe, where it's treated by in-vessel composting, which is basically the material is put into large vessels where it's heated and exposed to pressure to ensure that if there are any bacteria, pathogens, things like that in there, that it's killed during the process. And once it's reached a certain temperature, the material is then moved outdoors and it's left to compost in windrows in the traditional way outdoors, and it matures for about 6 weeks. And at the end of that process, we're left with a British standard quality compost, which meets the standards for that to be used as a soil improver. And we actually resell it at the HWRCs within Derby and Derbyshire. One of the more recent changes that we introduced was over winter, when we moved the collection schedule for the brown bins from a monthly to a fortnightly service during the period where that natural reduction in garden waste tonnages happens. Which resulted in customers receiving 4 fewer collections between November and March. Compared to the previous years, we collected just over 600 tonnes less garden waste, but we didn't see any movement in the black bin tonnages, which remained stable. So that was good news, because we didn't see the transfer of that material into the waste bins. And that change happened fairly smoothly with quite limited contact from customers. on that. Moving on, more recently, we've had some challenges which have led to normally the brown bin collections that haven't been made as scheduled. We are experiencing a combination of issues which has led to that. The main ones being insufficient collection staff to actually empty the bins due to absence levels within the council team and with the agency that we use. We're transitioning over to a new fleet of vehicles. We've had 15 recently, and we have experienced teething issues with those. One of our 2 smaller vehicles was off the road for an extended period of time, which meant the hard to reach locations where we need that smaller vehicle to access those roads were impacted more, unfortunately. And we're also struggling in terms of staffing within our workshop. There just aren't sufficient or unable to attract sufficient suitable qualified staff to man the workshop at the back. And during these times where we experience these issues, we will prioritise the collection of black and blue bins, but we're also taking steps to obviously mitigate against future disruption, which has involved rescheduling, servicing, looking to more quickly hire vehicles. And again, we're going through the process of trying to recruit additional drivers and loaders through the agency and with our own team, but the recruitment generally is quite challenging. At the moment, we're recycling around 38% of household waste, and that's from not only just the curbside services, but through Rensway HWRC and some of the materials we collect through bulky collections. In terms of engagement work, we have an annual engagement work plan which covers all of our waste services. So again, predominantly the curbside services, but also waste reduction, the HWRC, responsible waste management and things like that. We have 2 waste minimisation officers that are employed within the service, and there are face-to-face sort of representatives for the service who go out and then knock on doors, and they will assist people who are having difficulties with accessing the services and who need some perhaps additional support or information in terms of how to recycle and how to participate correctly. Some of the key things they've been doing more recently is working in the wards where there is an optimum recycling service to try and promote and encourage people to sign up to receive that service. And now that the fortnightly brown bin service is resumed, we're looking to do a similar thing in areas where we know they've got large gardens, but perhaps take up of the brown bin service isn't as good as it could be. And lastly, looking forward to the future, in 1923, DEFRA announced simpler recycling reforms. And they were introduced by the Environment Act 2021. This is going to see countrywide changes in recycling services, with all residents across England recycling the same core set of materials from March 2026. For Derby City, we already collect most of those core materials. The only additions will be soft plastic film, so bags and things like that, but also a weekly food waste collection. And that is a government requirement, which we're starting to get to grips with now. And there is more information on the weekly food waste collections, which is referenced in the background paper.
Fabulous, thanks, Carla. It's a really in-depth and detailed report. Thank you for taking us through it. I'll open it up to the committee for questions. Councillor Pandey, I saw your hand first.
Sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Carly.
Carly.
Yep.
Thanks for the presentation. I had many interaction with you as well, Simon. So blue bin contamination in general, and your council got 2 waste minimization officers, right? you can't enforce, you can't do anything if the people are contaminating their bins. You can only educate them, isn't it? So are we still at the same situation? Because I know if someone has contaminated the bin, then you will talk to them and you will refuse the collection. That will mean that it'll start overflowing. And if resident doesn't care, then it'll just keep on overflowing. What happens then?
So currently we can only educate and advise. We are looking in the future to see if we can do more, but currently that's our offer. We can only educate.
We've had this situation for so long. So can council do something, or this has to come from central government?
So colleagues within the council are currently looking at that now. And if that's something that we are going to do, they will bring a briefing note forward on that, but they are looking to see whether we can look at enforcement on that now.
And are we looking at any time scale, or like maybe we'll be having another meeting and we'll be at the same place, maybe in 6 months and 12 months?
Something that we're working with the localities team on. There is going to be a consultation in locality 3. Would that be
And 5.
correct?
And 2.
And 5 and 2, regarding potentially being able to implement a PSPO, which part of that will cover responsible waste management at home and using the bins correctly. And there is an enforcement process that flows from that. So whereas we can, within the waste team, we can only offer education, there are other teams within the council who will be able to enforce regarding those issues.
So when you say consultation, that will again put to public to decide whether they want this, or it's between the department, they decide, okay, PSPO, we can bring it in now.
There will need to be a consultation on
To bring PSPO. This quick one, second one was with the HMOs. We got a garbage problem because the occupancy is going high. So that means they're generating more waste. So we have overflowing bins, and also have we thought anything on that particular problem? Are we looking into some solution for that as well, or?
With regards to HMOs, we find that the landlords and managing agents are more amenable. They'll work with us more because there is more set out in legislation and through the licensing of them, which means they are prepared to work with us more because they have to maintain their license.
But as you would be aware that not all they are not all registered, because there's a.
Yeah.
So there is like a 6, it was 3 before, but it changed. Now there are 6 individuals living there, and that is resulting in overflowing of bins. So if we report through waste minimization officers, so
if the circumstances have changed, we can review the capacity that's offered. For a HMO, we recognise that there's different circumstances that they do produce more waste. And we do provide more capacity. So if the circumstances have changed, we can review that and make sure that they have sufficient capacity and that it's being used correctly. And then failing that, if we get to a point where we can't get any further with education and it isn't a registered HMO, then we can work with the environmental health colleagues to see if they can support us with making sure that they've got the appropriate capacity and the correct type of capacity so that they can participate correctly.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think Councillor Pandey sort of like took off on that, and the issue of enlightening residents, because again, if you have 2 people going around the whole of the city, that is grossly inadequate. But I remember we've had conversations about the possibility of putting out videos as well that, perhaps councillors can share, on our groups, and you can do that as well, because we do need to look beyond what we're doing now in terms of education. Because how many doors are you going to not be able to knock on a single day? How many people will answer those doors? How many hours would you spend having a conversation with just a few people? So we do need to change our tactics, I believe. And I'd like to know if we can put a timeline to when we can start putting out more of those information that can be shared as well, because then you're able to reach a lot more people than you can. And in coming back on the issue of staffing, yes, there more staff is needed, but this seems to have gone on for a while in terms of recruitment. Is there any plan to fast track this, or do we just keep going at this pace?
So we're currently recruiting, so we've got a lot of jobs that are out there across the services. So we're currently out recruiting for drivers and collectors, and we will onboard some more people. The agency have done a recruitment drive. They've done a number of days recruitment drive to bring some more numbers into the agency, which backfills our teams. So we are doing that. We're also going to start looking to see whether we can work with colleagues internally to see if there's other groups we can sort of get through to try and recruit through different ways. But it is tricky to get people. It really is tricky.
And in terms of the education bit, can we look at, because I know we had this conversation like maybe 4 months-ish ago or so. And I mean, it's not as if it's the easiest thing to just stick a camera in front of anyone, but again, it shouldn't take that long. We have discussed it with comms colleagues, and strangely enough, we were discussing it today with comms colleagues. So we will be feeding back on that. I haven't got a complete steer on it yet, but we were discussing it today. So we'll come back to you on it. Do you think we can have a timeline?
How long's a piece of string?
I can give you a timeline for an answer. So not a video. So I'll pick it up again with comms, and then I'll pick up a separate conversation with you. But we can definitely get an answer within the next few weeks. Whether it's taken forward or not, I don't know. But I can come back to you.
Okay.
Okay. So my question. Why are Arboretum, Mackworth and Normington and opt-in wards? Obviously, I'm new to all this, so I don't know what the reason is behind that. So I'd just like to know that if possible.
It's a historical thing.
Okay.
The recycling was in place citywide. A number of years ago, a decision was made to withdraw recycling in parts of those ward areas.
On what basis?
Due to issues with contamination, bins on streets and things like that.
Recycling.
Right. So for me, they're probably, well, definitely Arboretum and Normington, they're not even my wards, but obviously I go around them a lot as well. They're probably the worst wards in the city for bins on streets, rubbish everywhere, rats. I think the problem we've got is a language barrier problem. We need to look at that potentially. How we address that, I don't know, because we've got so many different nationalities living in one small area. But I just don't understand why we've got this opt-in thing. It should be for everybody. I understand that if it's contaminated, then it's going to cost us more money to sort, etc., etc. But surely this is part of the problem.
I think I just found the language front. One of the things that we found that has probably worked the best is that we try now to make everything pictorial. So instead of having to rely on written leaflets, a lot of it is based on images, so that most people can understand them, whatever language that they speak. We've offered over the years leaflets in different languages and so on, and there hasn't been the interest or the take of that, whereas these leaflets that are image-led do seem to work for most people.
Yeah, and I think with the collections as well. So the recycling was removed a number of years ago, sort of before, I don't know, before your time, before my time in the service.
So quick look online. So in 2014 is the year I'm getting that.
So I was at the authority then, but not involved in waste. So in that area, you would see there was contaminated bins, streets full of contaminated bins. So they were removed, and then probably in about 2019-20, we put it back in as opt-in so that we could gradually build the number of residents that were going to take part in the service.
Yeah.
So we've then been out educating people, and like you can see with Mackworth, is that now it's 70% of the people that had it removed from have now got it back. The key thing for us to remember is that when the recycling was removed from those areas, they went onto a weekly black bin collection. So that means that they're not all recycling, but from a waste capacity point of view, they're not a detriment. So they receive a weekly collection.
Yeah.
So
I understand that, but if you drove around them areas, you know we've got a major problem.
Yeah.
And it's even happening in Simple and Oswestry, not to that extent.
Yeah.
You know, put certain pockets of it. And it is a bugbear for residents. The amount of times bins on streets, overflow bins on streets, rubbish on streets, rat problem, and it's all coming from the same thing. I don't know what the solution is, but I think it's something we do need to look at. I know we're having a bit of a consultation or trial in our area on the bins on streets, which is amazing, because we do need to crack down on that, because it does obviously impede people on the pavement, etc. Didn't realise that we can use that for the contaminated waste as well. It comes under the same thing, does it?
It's being looked at, so it's not.
Potentially.
It's not being done yet, but it is being looked at.
I know, it's just, again, it feels like we're doing another thing where we are going to fine people, and I get it. We haven't got many options, but it feels like just fine and fly tipping, bins, parking, whatever. And I know we haven't really got many other options. It's a little uncomfortable. And it's generally in areas where people are on low incomes and probably need a bit more education.
And it's tricky, and we are driving. So Carly's team are spending a lot of time in the 3 wards trying to drive up those people opting in.
Yeah.
But the reality is, by putting recycling back into, if we just went now, we're going to put it back in, it won't resolve the problem.
No.
Because there will then be 2 or 3 bins on the streets outside every house. They will then be full of waste that isn't recyclable, so they won't be empty. They'll lose their weekly black bin collection, which means there will actually be a detriment.
Yeah.
Which is why it's got to be done gradually and carefully. And that's what we're trying to do. Yeah. Because equally, by doing it the way we're doing it, we're getting reasonable quality material. Because people who opt in actually want to take part.
Yeah, recycle.
Yeah. So there is definitely in those few wards, there is work to be done, and it's being done with the locality team, and we're working together on that. But it's not just one thing that will resolve those issues.
No, obviously, if we had the solution, we'd all be happy, wouldn't we? It's not a one size fits all type of thing.
I don't think education works. Councillors tried for a long time. You need to go enforcement way. That's my.
And it's like waste collection. It isn't a one size fits all situation. You know, we can't just say that the whole of Derby is going to get this one service and it will meet everybody's needs, because it won't.
No.
And that's why we have to be bespoke a little bit.
Well, it was just completely different. It was just the mention of the weekly food waste collection that they're going to be looking at doing. Do we know, will that process be another bin sort of, so it'll be?
Yes. So
it'll be like 3 or 4 bins.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we're being mandated by government to provide a weekly food waste collection, which will come in from April 26. When residents participate in that service, they will get 2 caddies. So they'll get a small one for the kitchen, about a 7-litre one, and then they'll get a collection caddy, which they'll put outside, which would be a 23-litre collection caddy that they'll present for collection weekly.
So not just a big, it's going to be something small enough to in the garage. Yes. I've got no room in the garage for them.
Yeah, I mean,
let's just be quite clear. There's not much food waste out of our house.
We have got a project live for that, and we did take a paper to cabinet last month, I believe it was, to sort of outline what we need to do. But that is a really big change for the service. It'll add probably about 100,000 collections a week.
Educate them to recycle as well.
Yeah, on top of the 150,000 collections.
I think going to have your work out there then, aren't you?
Yeah.
That's lovely. Thank you anyway. That's
thank you.
Possible.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for the explaining the report so well. I do quite like the pictures. I think from seeing like the leaflets in recent years, I've been attending some of the primary school visits and things with the big wheel, and the kids seem to like it and they're quite engaged with it. So I think a lot of the school kind of stuff is going really well from the feedback that I can see in Normanton at least. And the kind of stickers on the bin, that they're quite sort of clear messages. Whether, you know, especially when we're working with children, at least we know that message is getting in there and it will trickle down eventually. As Councillor Norman said, say, because we're welcoming so many new communities, what kind of things are we doing other than kind of pictorial messages or leaflets? I know Duke was very keen on videos. But in terms of how we seeking out new families, or is there any kind of way that where when people are coming into a new house as a new tenant, and we've got either licensed HMOs or anything, that we're targeting those families specifically and saying, you know, this is how we recycle, and this is what we're doing. We've got any kind of way of doing that?
We, again, our waste minimisation officers will work with landlords managing agents. We've tried to get them to incorporate it, for example, into tenancy agreements, and the additional information. For example, you've got a new resident, here's leaflets, here's links to where you can find new information and things like that. So we do try really hard to build those relationships with landlords managing agents and other housing associations, Derby Homes, so that when somebody is new to the city, they've got that information. Another thing that we try to do now is there's a routine when bins get delivered, they've got stickers on them so that people can see at a glance what can go in the bin as well.
Thanks.
There will be some further work with landlords as well coming in the future. So trying to ensure that landlords are responsible for educating the tenants that come into properties. So we are looking at that at the minute. That's something that's being looked at.
Yeah, thank you. That'd be really good.
Yeah. Just to go back on again, another, I'm sure each time you see an email from me, it's probably either James Close or Fragate or James Close, and it's because there's always a lot of issues with the bins in those in those areas. How do we mitigate against every 2 months, every 3 months, the overflow? And we go back and forth with the housing association or it's the council, or how do we make sure that it's not as repetitive as it's become? Because now you can sit down and you can plot a graph that in the next 2-3 months those bins are going to overflow again. So are there any learnings that that have been taken to make sure that it doesn't turn into an environmental hazard?
Thank you. It is tricky because the managing agents have got a responsibility to manage the waste that their tenants produce. So we have put in a service which should meet the needs, but it doesn't always. So every time there's an issue there, we have to go to the managing agent to resolve. We go through environmental health colleagues to contact the managing agent to resolve. And you'll be fully aware, some of those locations, they're very slow at responding. So we are looking at that. I think if we were to get enough evidence that there was an issue there, we would be approaching the managing agents, trying to get them to put an alternate collection in with a third party or with ourselves that we charge for. That is generally the latter of the resorts. I'm dealing with a property at the minute who's moving that way, where we say, actually, you're not managing your waste within your capacity. You will need a weekly collection. You'll pay for the second one. So that's something we can go towards, but that's not easy.
Yeah, but sorry.
I mean, if it's our fault and we've missed the bins, then we will go and clear it all up.
Look, my problem with again these two locations is that you can almost tell. It's almost like clockwork, So having had the history of these locations, we shouldn't now. To start to have those difficult conversations, because it's going to happen, sadly.
I do agree. We are in contact. There's 3, isn't there? St James. I think there's 3 managing agents there.
Yeah, there are 3.
Yeah.
That's a fact. All I would say it's slightly different. You said that doubts are often expressed about whether materials are actually recycled. On the stickers that you put on the bins and such like the labels, couldn't you just as a one-off put that on, that it's some of the things that you've put in here to sort of reassure the public that what is being collected is recycled, instead of just everybody thinking, well, it is or it isn't. and to try and dispel that thought is when you're,
Yeah,
is that a possibility?
it is. We've developed the website recently so that there is more information there about the different grades of material and where and how they get reprocessed. We could certainly look at putting it on the stickers and things like that.
Mind you, they had a big splurge up my street last week and just about every blue bin wasn't collected because they said it was contaminated with the wrong thing. So I went up the street having a look what was in it to see, well, that's what happened.
Councillor Chambers?
Yeah, just a couple more questions. Would you expect that figure of, I think you said 38% to be higher? Or is that like an average that we're recycling, if I picked up the right percentage while I was writing it?
Yeah, that's right. So that's everything that we collect. For a unitary authority, it's reasonable. I suppose one of the challenges of people managing the waste properly is it tends to be linked to deprivation, which unfortunately we have quite a high level of within the city. So with that background, it's a reasonable level of recycling.
Okay. And why do we send it all the way up to Crow? Is there no one nearer that will do that, or is it just more cost effective to do that?
We went through a procurement process for the processing of the material. Best value was that option, but also we did used to have a facility that was more local, but that is no longer there. So it's sort of, all things considered, the best option.
Okay, thank you.
You know about the recycling, do you have any good practicing council which has like set standards in the UK that, you know, they have sorted out the overflowing bin problems and they're recycling really to high standards? Do you like sort of do brainstorming with the councils on how this can be achieved?
Yeah, we regularly will look at other councils, so we're not alone in the issues and the challenges that we've got. There's lots of other city authorities with a lot of the same issues. So yes, we will attend seminars, webinars, conferences to look at best practice and what other people are doing and how we can apply that within the city.
Equally, you've got to look across other authorities and they'll be collecting waste in different ways. So just comparing us with somewhere else isn't necessarily the way, because we've got free garden waste, some other people are charged, we've fully commingled, some people have got paper and card out, some people have got complete sort with boxes. So the offer across the UK is very different on the way that you collect it. So we collect fully commingled, which is the easiest recycling service you can do, but it does come with higher contamination.
Any more?
Actually, yeah, sorry. So just on the staffing, why is it challenging to get some staff? Are we not paying the right rate, or why are we not attractive to these people?
Depends which staff. So within the vehicle workshop, we're recruiting. The people we're looking for are very qualified, generally got HGV licenses. There was a HGV shortage recently. So if you're a fully qualified mechanic, HGV fitter with a HGV license, you can earn some really good money in the private sector. So they are difficult to attract. I think with refuse collection staff and some of our other services, is the labour market isn't the best way of putting it, but it's not flourishing. You know, we struggle to recruit some of our roles. So the agency are equally struggling to recruit theirs. So it could be a combination of pay, or that there just isn't the available people there.
Be honest, would you like to be a dustbin then? Because how many miles a day do they walk?
12 to 14 miles a day.
And in all weathers?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like postmen do it, don't they? And
The post probably get paid like.
Driving, and it's a foul job.
Hang on, sorry.
I say I've done the driving, dustman,
Really?
and I've just abandoned the cars everywhere and you can't get down, and horrible job.
I understand.
I only went a week.
Not the longest you ever had a job, wasn't it?
Not quite, but yeah, close.
no, go on.
No. I'm sure I say something.
I don't even know if I'm allowed to ask this because it's about Rainsway, but while I've got you in the room. So I just want to ask a question. So, you know, if we've got a morning or 6 hours of 15-minute slots compared to 6 hours on a Sunday where you've had 600 cars come through, which I've been given a figure from 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago, what is the difference in cost on that? Why is it? What is the difference in cost? I know you can't obviously give me figures, but I just don't understand, because obviously if you've got it open for 6 hours and you've got 15 minutes slots, you're only going to get X amount of cars, aren't you? But for the same amount of time, you're having 600 cars come through it in the same period.
So you're thinking, why is it more expensive?
Is it more expensive to have it open than 15-minute slots, and why?
Yeah.
And that's what it's based on.
The more vehicles you're pushing through the site, the greater the tonnages we collect, and therefore the greater the.
Yeah, which sounds straightforward, but surely when you've got people coming through every 15 minutes, you still got to pay somebody to be on site. I know you're going to get less tonnage.
It's the waste disposal.
That's the big
So
cost.
you've got your staffing costs, a fixed cost. Whereas if you,
We would employ more staff on a Sunday to help manage the throughput.
And would you ever look at reducing the 15 minutes to something like, I mean, I do my car, got a full car, all of the different bits, within 5 minutes. I mean, I do sort mine out, to be fair, in my car. But even if we halved it, but then are we going to be putting the costs up because we're going to have more slots and then taking more tonnage?
so the more throughput you put through the site, the more waste goes in there, the more expensive it is.
So if we did 3 hours on a Sunday and 3 hours on a Wednesday, for example, just to give people two options, we're still spending the same amount of money, or would that not work because obviously you're getting more people in on a Sunday? Just looking at different options, because obviously
I think it's a separate conversation.
sorry.
I think if we could happy for the team to reach out and have a conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
I think the words "want to take away" have never applied quite as much to anything.
Just get all excited about it. I just think we could do.
You mentioned Rainsway, obviously it says in here about some of the waste is turned into soil that you can get from there. We used to be able to get it when you could just turn up at the tip, but how can you get it now if you've got to have a slot? Go to the tip.
You can just turn up and buy it.
How? I don't know how.
And they should text a car before. Not that they've got there.
No, I just wondered how you got it, that was all.
Yeah, most people buy it when they're dropping stuff
Dropping
off,
stuff
so
off.
they'd make a booking.
Right. Okay, that's all fair.
So you can't just turn up and buy it.
On a Sunday without the 6 hours, you could.
Well, no.
But you'd have to queue.
It's all there's nowhere you've got to go in to come back out to get it.
Yeah.
Got questions from anybody?
I've got a statement on this to make.
I'll do a couple of questions for myself and then I'll bring you in if that's okay. So a couple for myself. So at 4.11, so it mentions that contamination accounts for almost 20% of the material collected. Then obviously it says that it's only £500,000 per year to sort of deal with that issue. So that, although it's a significant amount of money, it seems a very, very low cost if we're saying in volume wise, 1 bin out of every 5 is full of the wrong things. But over the course of the whole year, that only costs £500,000 to deal with. That seems a really low figure.
So of the composite, not everybody's bin will be full. There's all sorts of different variations, isn't there? So the 20% is based on the materials gone through the MRF, it's come out the other end. By weight, it's roughly 20% contamination. A proportion of that, though, is glass fragments, which are very heavy. But then you've got the other stuff, the paddling pools and the kids' toys and bagged rubbish and etc.
No, honestly, it's great if that's how low the cost is for that much contamination. Just seemed, yeah, really, really low figure. So, but obviously, there's the other side to all the different points of one, why it's 20%, one, why it's £500,000, which I totally accept.
And it is hugely inefficient in that we've paid for it to be recycled and then we have to then deal with that. So.
Then at 4.20 or 4.21, sorry, it mentions how we're looking at utilising Mondays more in terms of the difficulties we've had with staff shortages and the vehicles. Is there much of a cost element to doing more on Mondays?
Just overtime for staff, overtime and fuel.
Do we have any figures on what that might be, or is that something that could be provided outside the meeting at all? Yeah. The final one is around 4.28. So that we're wanting more door knockings in areas that have got gardens at the lower brown bin collections. Is that just in the 3 wards that have got opt-ins for certain services, or is that across the city?
Is that for the brown bins?
So yeah, 4.28 is on the brown bin. So obviously we've gone through, before it mentions the 3 wards, it does a bit on this as well. Is it across the city for the?
Widely, so we can look at the density of the take up, and we know which areas have got gardens, and so we can then target the areas where take up could be higher.
Fantastic. So my big kind of thing for you guys to take away from that really around that door knocking is you speak to councillors in the ward as well. I mean, we're all happy to door knock at certain points of the year. I won't give away what points of the year those are, but we're all happy to go door knocking. We're all happy to talk to residents. I think bringing councillors in that, because if I look at Oakwood, and obviously Oakwood's, there was a shape like a shark's fin, the bit under the fin, I can't think of a single house there that doesn't have a garden. But the brown bin take up there is higher in another area of Oakwood where I know we have houses that don't all have gardens than it is in that bit. So I'm happy to go around and speak to residents there and promote the service to them, because they may not be aware of it. Some people still think you've got to pay into it when you opt in. There is still some misconceptions around it. I'd be happy to partake in that. And looking around, I'm seeing everybody nodding. I think all councillors on this committee and across the council will be happy to help out in that. So I think if those members of the team can reach out to councillors around that, I think that'd be a really positive step forward. And 5 people knocking on doors is better than 2 people knocking on doors.
I think that would really trust the team as well. Extra support.
So that so you have?
Yeah, just sort of following on from what you said about if you're going to use Monday more, that means you've got to let people know that you're going to use Monday more. Is that feasible? Is it on the cards?
So the workshops are using Monday more to try and get the trucks ready for Tuesdays. So they'll be working on, we're going to be focusing on refuse trucks on those days. Certain vehicles like the small access vehicles, they've moved the servicing of those to a Friday because that's our best day for the collection team, so that hopefully by Tuesday, if it needs parts and work doing, it's ready. So there is that. But then for missed collections, what we do say to anyone with missed collections is leave your bin out and we'll get to it. So if we can catch it up during the week, so if we've got staffing to put extra rounds on, we will do so. But all else fails, we will generally send out extra crews on a Monday to try and collect those missed streets.
Right, because following on from the brown bin things as well, around my street in Allington, I've had to complain to get several brown bins removed. People have filled them up with concrete and things, and there's been several that's sort of been lying down, and I know I'm getting older and weaker, but I couldn't even make them flex. They were that heavy and things. So around Carter Street where I live and things, most of them were taken away.
Yeah, we do get requests to remove abandoned bins.
Well, most of them were from me around there because they were just a mess and stuff were blowing out everywhere.
Yeah. We do try and find it out.
That's an area that's, and like I say, I'd help in the education of that, especially around those areas. Because a lot of them have got gardens, but don't use the brown bin for the garden waste. Just anything that comes to mind.
Any more questions for anybody? No, Councillor Ingram, you want to?
Yeah, just it came up on my memories this morning actually about all what you did during COVID. I've not seen you personally since then, but I was just wanted to thank you for that, because I remember in our ward, it was one of the biggest things was I need to get my bin emptied. And we worked with the local residents, and if you remember, I still get it known as the bin man of Charleston. You know, we had all the bins moved up from the cul-de-sacs right to the end, everything was prominent. We had 100% bin collection every week, you know, which was more than any other. So I think Mackworth at one time was down to about 60%. So I just wanted to say thank you for that, because I know it was 4 years ago, but it's still very real in my memory, and you did a fantastic job. So well done.
No, it's appreciated, and the residents supported us.
Oh,
So the residents,
bless it.
you know, across the wards, residents were supporting us to keep service running. So no, that's really appreciated. I'll pass that on.
The pictures that the children were drawing you, I thought were amazing.
We had them on the wall. It's the whole of the office. We have the pictures.
Amazing.
So no, I'll pass that on. Thank you.
I think there's one thing you can take from all of us. We might have a lot of questions and queries, but I think we all appreciate the work that all the refuse teams, themselves and all the teams do to ensure that it's done. They are the heroes. They're underappreciated. To be quite honest, I think it's a very difficult job. I think the public don't always appreciate how difficult a job it is to do that. So I think if you can pass the thanks from all members of this committee, and I would imagine all councillors would really appreciate that.
Definitely.
Thank you.
So we'll bring that item then to a close. Thank you both for coming, and of course you're welcome to go early if you do need to, or you're welcome to hang around with us as well. So move on then. So move on then to item 6 on the agenda. So update on public protection officers. So Neil, I imagine what you're going to go into. And then you've got the presentation as well.
Thank you, Chair. I was asked to attend to provide the board with an update on any changes of enforcement powers with regards to the protection team and with an update around recruitment.
That's my stomach gas.
But so listed on the slide there are all the acts that pertain to the powers that the PPOs of Derby City Council are warranted to enforce. Particular relevance to the three bits there on the right hand side of the slide. So with regard to the Environmental Protection Act of 1990, PPOs spend time enforcing in regard to that act around littering, fly tipping and duty of care. The Antisocial Behaviour and Crime Policing Act of 2014, that gives us powers around public safety protection orders. So things like community protection warnings, community protection notices. There have been no changes to enforcement powers, but one of the things that has recently changed is the amounts that we can charge for fly tipping offences. The maximum fine that we can charge for fly tipping used to be £400 with an early payment of £250. It's now £600 with an early payment fee of £360. They're the fees that we're working to and using since the paper was signed off. I apologise, Chair, but my notes have gone, so I'm now flying solo. Thought it would be useful to give an update on the recruitment. So as people will remember, in May 2023, the team became 10 full-time equivalents. Over the months since then, we saw 4 members of the team leave. It's always sad to see people leave, but I think one of the good things about the PPO service is that people tend to leave to pursue the skills and the knowledge that they've learned. So we had 2 team members leave to join the police. We had a team member leave to join the prison service, and we have a team member that's left to join the housing colleagues. That left us with a challenge, the recruitment challenge that we've kind of already talked about this morning. We've had similar challenges. We've had similar challenges because we've struggled to shortlist candidates with the relevant skill set to be able to do the job. I think one of the things that we've been quite conscious of with the PPO team is that we've kind of needed people to be able to hit the ground running. So we have looked for people that have got a skill set that would make life easier for everybody. We've had recruitment rounds where we got through to offering somebody the post that then declined it. We've had all sorts of challenges, but I'm pleased to say that we're now at a point where we have 9 full-time equivalent PPOs in post. We're carrying 1 vacancy that as soon as we get spend planner approval will be out and that we will fill. That's a recent vacancy that we've had. It's also worth noting that we are interviewing later this week for 2 additional temporary posts that will be joining the team through PCC funding. Those individuals will be focused very much on police identified hotspots, but it will be additional capacity in the team, which is more than welcome. Whilst the presentation today was focused on the update of enforcement powers and recruitment, in the pre-meet with the chair was suggested that we just provide panel members, board members with an update of some of the other things that our PPOs will get involved in. So just to pick out a few here, multi-agency working is something that I think we pride ourselves on with regard to PPOs. More recently, we've seen PPOs coordinate and lead multi-agency activity in the city centre. So doing joint patrols with the SNT, with the Rangers, with the other colleagues that are relevant around antisocial behaviour that was taking place early hours of the morning, around begging, just to kind of get on top of that sort of thing. In terms of community engagement, the ward walkabouts, I think our PPOs are all now pretty much connected into whether it be boards, forums, walkabouts, residents' meetings. There's also the work that we do through a service level agreement that was agreed with Derby Homes around targeting specific hotspots that Derby Homes colleagues identify, as well as the enforcement activity that we'll go on to look at. So this slide shows us 2 things. It shows us the fixed penalty notices that have been issued in the first 3 months of 2024 on the left-hand side of the slide. It also shows us the number of fixed penalty notices that have been issued over the course of 2022, 2023 and 2024. It's worth noting that whilst these are the FPNs that have been issued, that doesn't mean that it hasn't been things that people have investigated and worked with residents on. With regard to the fixed penalty notices, one of the things that I think we're really conscious of as a service is that enforcement needs to be central to the work that we do. So certainly over the course of the last 6 to 8 months, as our management capacity has increased, so has the focus on being clear with our team around enforcement. The approach that we're taking is one of appropriate enforcement. So whilst we want to make sure that our residents have the understanding and the information available to them to be able to respond to the challenges that we face and that have already been talked about today, we're also being really clear that we need to have a team that has the skills and confidence to be able to enforce when needed. And one of the things that we're moderately pleased about is the increase in the number of fixed penalty notices that have been issued in this year, but it's something that we're very much pushing on. We talked earlier about the partnership work that we're doing with Derby Homes and the service level agreements in place to support that. You'll see here the figures and activities against the hotspots that we patrol, which are across the city. Fly tipping and antisocial behaviour, as you can imagine, being the highest areas of focus. This gives us a breakdown of the job requests that come through to the PPO inbox, specifically over the course of the first 3 months of the year. So over the first 3 months of the year, we had 661 requests into the PPO inbox. One of the things that we are trying to push with the PPO inbox, that requests for service and requests for support go through that PPO inbox, because one of the things that we're really trying to do is up our game around intelligence and data. And where we have jobs coming through other sources, it can be tricky to keep on top of that. There is also an issue with PPOs receiving requests going into their specific email account. It's kind of hard to keep track of those, particularly if the PPO might be on for whatever reason. So we are asking, and we do get good support with jobs going through to the PPO inbox. As you can see, and as you would expect, councillors send us a significant number of jobs, and that's really pleasing. I think one of the things that we've been working on is trying to increase the number of resident reporting, which I think we're starting to move forward on a little bit as well. And I guess why that's significant is the decrease in numbers means we have to be far more active in terms of our engagement and relationship building. So the more we can get out there and more we can have residents reporting, the better. Looking at a breakdown of jobs, on the right hand side of the slide there, you'll be able to see the breakdown of jobs that councillors have reported to us. I don't think there'll be any surprises on what those are. Things like parking issues, things like grass verges, parking on grass verges are issues that we are trying to resolve. There's been a bit of a conversation tonight about bins on streets, and I think this is a service that we haven't had for that long, or I haven't inherited for that long. But one of the things that we're trying to respond to is the challenge that we're hearing councillors talk about with regard to bins on streets and our residents as well. So we are looking to push forward with some support and some action on that. It is early days. We are having to consult a wide variety of people to make sure that we get that to happen, but it is something that we're keen to pursue and will pursue persistently to get to a point where we're able to do something that's a little bit more robust. PPOs take part in a number of proactive patrols. You can see these here. One of the things that we've been trying to do through the new approach that we've got is to think more considerately about the challenges that each neighbourhood and each locality faces. So you'll see 105 jobs identified in Normanton there. That was a piece of work that we picked up as a locality team in its widest sense to do some targeted work in Normanton around street scene, inconsiderate parking, that sort of thing. And it's one of the things that we're looking to build on in terms of the approach of having PPOs, locality officers, managed by locality managers and supported by local area coordinators, to really start to think about what is it that we do in a really targeted way to support each neighbourhood and each neighbourhood's priority. Aside from the enforcement work, there are some key themes. So supporting our colleagues in Derby Homes, in the police with things like homelessness, making sure that vulnerable individuals get the support that they need in a way that makes sense to them, connected to what's going on across the city. There's our travelling community that we take a lead on supporting at the point at which we start to have people arrive in the city. That's something that we continue to lead on and will continue to lead on. We're currently reviewing the protocol around that to make it as fast and as smooth as we possibly can. Other bits, the team are asked to support in exempt accommodation visits. So those residents that are in supported accommodation outside of the registered ones, we're doing some work with our housing colleagues around visiting residents, cross-checking some of the information that we have available to us against the visits that we do to make sure that people that are in that accommodation have got the support they need and are being positive, responsible citizens in our communities. Safe and well checks. It was something that the team picked up quite a lot during COVID, going around and checking on people, vulnerable residents, isolated residents. That's something that we still do. During the most recent storm, PPOs were involved in knocking on doors to residents that were at risk of flooding And again, that is something that we will continue to respond to. And one of the other things that we're trying to do is support residents in signposting people to the right service, and not just signposting people to the right service, but making sure they have the confidence to get there without going overboard, but just supporting somebody to make that call. We were asked for a couple of examples of the work of PPOs and how that relates to the locality team. So the example that we have here is a report coming through to the PPO inbox from a resident about some antisocial behaviour in his accommodation. The PPO went out to investigate and talk to the resident about the antisocial behaviour within his block of flats. As a result of that particular issue was responded to. Conversation took place with SNT. Ongoing work to try and manage that was supported through the housing provider as well. But the PPO also chatted to the resident about the other issues that he got going on in his life. He disclosed a number of health concerns to the PPO, and the PPO suggested that he speak to the local area coordinator. That led to an ongoing relationship with the local area coordinator. And I guess why that's relevant is that this particular resident now feels more connected, feels more supported, feels less isolated, and as a result feels safer. Perceptions of safety are one of the things that I think we all struggle with. And that's just a small example of how we're trying to address that through having good conversations with people. Second example was some residents, a couple, an elderly couple. We had reports into the PPO inbox of an overflowing bin, rubbish in the garden. PPO visited. There were all sorts of issues going on in that household, as there often are, managing waste being one of them. So after investigating, the PPO knocked on the door, spoke to the residents, who were an older, vulnerable couple who were really struggling with mobility, lacked social connection. So in that instance, the PPO got that couple to connect to the assisted bin collection, but also supported them to make a call through to adult social care. As a result, that particular couple got a little bit of support to continue living where they are. And whilst there was no fine issued, there was education around waste management, and that couple do feel more supported and connected to be in their community. The final thing was just a kind of a talk through what happens when there's a fly tipping. So in this particular instance, an issue of a sofa and a fridge and several bin bags of waste have been left. PPO will go out, take pictures of the fly tip, put on the relevant PPO to examine the fly tip to see if we can pick up any evidence, any details, documentation alluding to who might have done the fly tip, had the appropriate signs, find out if it was on private or public land and if we needed to do anything to resolve that particular issue, put the signs up to discourage fly tipping, contact Street Pride to get it cleared, talk to residents nearby to see if there are any witnesses, talk to local businesses to see if there's any CCTV. I guess the challenge with this is the amount of time that takes to do the investigation and to do the investigation thoroughly and properly, which can be weeks sometimes. In this particular instance, there wasn't an FPN issue, but what we did do was gather and log intelligence, put signs up to defer future fly tipping, and begin to develop that two-way conversation with residents and business owners about the fact that we're present and that we're doing something in their local area. Finally, I thought it would be relevant just to give a sense of the areas that our public protection officers are involved with and connected into. So a composite week of the things that our PPOs might get involved in. So there will be things like the follow-up requests, Derby Homes hotspots patrols, which are often, we'll have those on a daily basis. whilst also patrolling the area, searching out evidence for fly tips, going back to contact people, and then the other engagement activities that we've already talked about. Thought it would be relevant to give a sense of the breadth of the role, and to acknowledge that whilst enforcement is clearly a key part of the role at this point in time, we all ask our PPOs to get involved in a variety of tasks. That's me. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you, Neil, for that presentation. So I'll open up to questions and comments from councillors. Just before I do, just mention obviously last time we had a very, very good discussion on this. I think we touched on a lot of issues from our own wards. We did slightly stray into naming specific officers. I think if we can not name specific officers, but still talk about what goes on in our wards, I think it'd be great for this one, just because the officers aren't here to put their point across. I think it would be unfair to them. None of us would particularly want to be named in a meeting that's then put on YouTube where we weren't able to put our own thoughts across. So I think if we can just avoid doing that one, that'd be great. So can we see hands again? Councillor Farr first. Yes.
We've got PPO in Alveston South, because I've never met him yet.
So the PPOs for Alberton South, I know they were at the.
Is that the one where there's one short?
No, we have two, and one of the PPOs was at the community event that you organised around the shops.
Yeah.
So Jason.
Yeah.
So I think you've definitely met him.
I've met him, yeah, but I've not met anybody wandering around. I understand what they're doing here is a vital job, and how anybody actually does the job, I don't know. It's a thankless task. But I'd like to got quite a few issues I'd like to bring up with.
Okay, well,
with somebody.
Well, I guess first port of call would be your locality manager, so
Yeah.
Steph.
Yeah.
But meeting with Steph and Jason and Meg is something we can definitely do.
Yeah, because I've got quite a few things to bring up with them.
Okay.
One of them, the Council Chambers brought up that I've followed up several times. But, so yeah, that's my name.
Just sorry, something, but have you got JT as well? If you've got staff, you've got JT as well.
Yeah.
If you contact them, they should be.
Yeah, and Claire.
Yeah, they're very good and very proactive as well as.
Yeah, I use them for a lot, but it was just certain areas of this job description
I know.
here.
I know. I mean, I think Steph.
Well, you've got the same.
Yeah. So
You've got the same
she's
CPO.
on board.
Yeah.
And I think you'll see some changes.
So in the last scrutiny board, I was a little bit negative about PPOs. Well, not negative, but a bit bemused by it. I'd not met mine. Now I have met Jason. I've been working really well with Jason, and I'm going to do a big shout out to. I know we're not meant to be naming anyone, but Jason's been Superman for me. And so since the last meeting, I don't know if anything was said or just things have changed and we've got more people on board, but he's worked really well. On the fly tipping issue, I mean, we've issued quite a few FPNs and something, but what I do with Jason, so we'll have a fly tip. I will do a shout out on social media. Has anyone got any CCTV, ring doorbell, know anything? 9 times out of 10, we get some evidence. It goes straight to Jason and he can go and issue the FPN. He doesn't have to do all the other bit. Just to be, it saves him a lot of time. Then I put on social media that someone's had a nice £600 fine, which then puts everybody else off. And it has reduced it in some hotspot areas across the ward. So that does work.
Your support's been really helpful, and the video footage is sometimes challenging.
Yes.
But
yes.
I think the relationship that's been developed means that everybody knows what we're looking for now, and that actually from a PPO service we're truly not trying to be difficult but supportive.
No.
And I think one of the things that has changed is we now have the necessary number of people on board to really get stuck into this sort of stuff.
Yeah, and I understand that. And I think last time we were quite low on numbers, but obviously I'd been in my role 6-7 months, something. I'd never met PPO. But, you know, we're doing a school trial on a safety zone. Jason's been at that. He's been at a number of things at Litter Picks. So, yeah, the teams, different agencies are all working together. And I've got to say that as a positive that's happened since the last board, if I'm honest. So yeah, I'm quite happy with the way things are going. Get yourself onto Jason because he's brilliant. And Megan, to be fair, Megan's starting to get really involved as well. But yeah, thank you.
Hiya. I just say firstly, thank you. We'll work with the PPOs, and you know they're absolutely amazing with everything they do. And I know in Normanton we've had it's hard because fewer people have got Ring doorbells or cameras around the properties, and it's been a challenge. But you know, the PPO team been really helpful. You mentioned the inbox. This might be more kind of corporate kind of side of this. But when we send a message to the inbox, we get like an automatic message back that says, if you're an elected member, please use the council portal. Mm-hmm. So sometimes I've gone in, okay. I use a bit of both. Sometimes my co-councillors prefer to use email, so I might work with them on that, and sometimes I'll use the portal. And the portal, we get 2 selections. I don't know if you know, you get either like fly tipping, get it cleared, or fly tipping, get it investigated. There's kind of 2 options. But I know that a lot of the time I've used the get investigated option. It's still come back with a kind of, Street Pride will clear this thing. It's not come back in the same way that the PPO team will come back in. So I don't know if that's something perhaps you're not aware of. Something whether what we're putting in the portal is making its way to you in the right way, in a timely manner. But another question was that the inbox, I think it was like 660, which is, a lot of emails for anyone. So is the public also using the same email address that we're using as well? Okay. Have there been any thoughts about having one for just councillors, elected members?
It hasn't been, but it's definitely something we can look at.
Yeah, because sometimes, everyone's email needs to be responded to, but sometimes we might have more kind of personal information, or there might be a lot of repetition. Because if a public member has told us, it might be they've already emailed the council as well, and they've already told us. So there might be repetition of the same thing, which might save you some time. But just a thought out there.
Thank you. Definitely something we can consider.
So you wanted to? I think I was looking at this. What's it called? Yeah. Where are we now? 2024. There must be some really nice places to live in Derby, because. So I take it that do you have any problem? You have no problems at all with flight to Allenton then?
I report it myself and getting.
Well, it's not on here, is it? Not for any. But about Oakwood, you have what are those areas on here?
The figures that are there are where we've issued FPMs, not necessarily all the things that we've looked at and investigated where we haven't been able to resolve within it.
That could be an interesting to see. Could we have that information brought to this board? Every bit of work that you have done. So you might be right. It might be, let's say in Allenton, you only get sofas. You're never going to find any on the sofa unless you go down the DNA route, which I don't think we will. But that would be an interesting graph to see of how much totally and how many fly tips have been reported that you got sorted out. I'd be interested to see that figure.
One of the things that we're really keen to do is get smarter and slicker around data and intelligence. And it's one of the things that we need to pick up just in terms of the way in which PPOs record things in a consistent way. But it's definitely something that we want to move towards because it doesn't capture the full extent of the work that they're doing on a day-to-day basis.
And another shout out to Jason, by the way, he is very good. He was getting his hands dirty on Friday in Chellaston. And it issued in there because that was the day that the fines went up to £360. That was the day that somebody got one.
And I think it's worth mentioning Chris as well.
Mention all of them.
Yeah, let's mention and
any more comments or questions from councillors? Yeah, just the one thing for me then, I'm not mean to put you on the spot now because I'm taking my localities manager and locality officer already, but it is actually the point that Councillor Ingall's already made there, is that Oakwood features it doesn't feature on the FPN list at all. It also doesn't feature on the proactive patrols list, which as a ward councillor really concerns me because I previously got reports that said this week the PPO's done this week they've done this. They stopped a few weeks ago and I wasn't quite sure why. Before I've got an answer to it, I've obviously now seen this report that says not only are there no FPNs, and in a way I sort of get that figure because we've sent a lot of things to our PPOs and a lot of things are sorted without needing an FPN. That can be really positive in a lot of ways. But to then see my ward not feature on proactive patrols at all concerns me in a whole other way because I'm then thinking, well, where's even the presence in my ward PPOs at this point? So I'm not expecting an answer from you now. It's something I'm taking up separately with locality officers and locality managers to speak to with PPOs, but it is a concern I as a ward councillor have now got that my ward doesn't feature on that at all.
And it concerns me as well, given that I realise that I'm here today and you're the chair. So one of the things that I'm not quite sure what's happened here, because that doesn't reflect what I believe to be true, but I think it is something that we do definitely need to pick up.
Yeah, Alex, I'll take it with you because I don't the locality managers and officers. Don't want to put you on the spot with anything missing or anything like that.
Fair enough, but I don't think it reflects activity.
No.
And if it doesn't and it's not here, then
yeah, but that's why I've got the meeting with our locality team, is to determine what's behind that.
Yeah.
Because I know they've been there. I've sent them to things. They've always responded to anything I've sent them. What's going on with those two data sets?
Yeah.
So it's something I would take outside this meeting. So Chamber, so your hand first.
So you get a report saying your PPAs have done this, this, and this week.
Previously.
Because I don't get that.
No.
So again, that's something we're not consistent on then.
I think it is down to, well, I think there's an element of, we've got a new group of people in, we've had a number of appointments over the last, so consistency is something that we definitely work on.
Yeah.
And consistency of what people actually want is something that we can build on, absolutely.
Okay. Just maybe a question with you.
Yeah, it was weekly at one stage, it went to fortnightly, went to monthly, and if I'm honest, weekly was almost too much in a sense. It helped having it fortnightly or monthly were really helpful to have those overall pictures, because sometimes you report something in week 1, it's finally dealt with in week 4, and by week 4 you're checking back all your previous reports to see when it went in. Fortnightly and monthly was really helpful. Yeah.
Which is something we can look to build consistency around.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, I get a response back from Jason or Megan anyway when they've done something, so they are very good at that.
Yeah.
But I am a guilty one of sending it directly to them, but I've also sent it to PPO.
And I guess consistency is something that
we need to work on as well.
Yeah.
Sending it to the right inbox.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Just a really quick one. You know, you mentioned the proactive patrols thing. I think there might just be something in the data set, because I just noticed, I think Arboretum's not on here.
Yeah.
So if so we you know, locality 3, Normanton, Arboretum and Abbey, we know that we're the top wards that, you know, are probably using PPO services. So I think there might be something there.
And I suspect that is a challenge around the recording system, which is the next task to get nailed down and right for the team.
Thank you.
I think that is the importance of taking it up with our own locality managers and officers and taking that data back, because they said Arboretum's not on, but City Centre is on, but City Centre can be Arboretum and Darley because of where the split now is. So which set do those lie in? I think it sounds like it's good that it's one that's working on, and again, something to take up with our own locality managers and officers, I think. So any further comments or questions on that one at all? No, brilliant. In that case, Neil, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on then to item 7, the work programme 23 to 24. Any questions, comments, suggestions, or anything for anybody on that one at all? No, fantastic. So that brings us then to the end of this meeting, which also brings us to the end of all of our meetings for this council year. As Chair, I just want to say a huge thank you to everybody on the committee for all the work we've done over the year. I think we've tackled some really big issues. I think we've scrutinised a lot of key points. And one of the things that makes me kind of most proud being the chair of this committee is I think if you ask somebody to come in here and draw party political lines based on the discussions of our meetings, I don't think they could do it, because I don't think we've been party political on this. We came out of a very highly charged local election, and I think we've put all the politics back and we've worked as a committee to scrutinise the issues and the topics that have come in front of us. And I'm really, really happy that that's how we've done that. I think it's testament to all of us. I'd love to continue being the chair of this committee after May. It's for the council to decide that one. But if anybody is not a member of this committee next, best of luck with everything you do. But hopefully we'll be seeing us all again after May.
Yeah, Chair, I just wanted to say you've done a job. Just go back to what you said. Party politics aside, this has been a committee to be part of. I would like to say thank you.
Shame you can't do it in the trainer, isn't it? That would be a lot easier.
So with that one then, I'll thank you all for coming, and we'll formally close our meeting.
Thank you.